And we're not going to talk about in-flight connectivity and why you need it for some charter. Both of these gentlemen think they've already won that argument, and everyone in the room agrees that it's now given that you have to have connectivity. But what we're going to focus on is how you guys think you can use, or how you guys think data can revolutionise the business aviation market. Right, James, how can it? I'll do James and Jim. James.
Well, I think connectivity and the data that's going across those networks is an increasing and improving technology. Technology has one great purpose, so I've heard someone say, which is to enhance lives. And I think that in this current climate, that opportunity is not just for the passengers, which is why we kind of wanted to get away from the passenger experience, which is very well served, improving all the time, great services on the horizon as well.
Sorry, you think great services on the horizon, so it's not there yet?
Continuing along, yeah. It's not there yet for everybody in all aspects. And what we're trying to do, I think, is look at the connected ecosystem and see how the three entities that we essentially serve right now, which I see as the passengers, the operations, and the aircraft itself, can become an increasing part of the Internet of Things and offer up new opportunities for flexibility and finding new and improved ways to operate all these aircraft and interoperate with the rest of the World Wide Web as it grows and develops and affects all of our lives.
Just as the aircraft of things, like the Internet of Things, I think. Jim, comments?
Yes, very similar to what James was saying, is that there's a lot of opportunity still out there with the aircraft. So we focused a lot in the last few years on making sure that the passengers in the back got what they needed. Now the next phase, or the next 3 to 5 years, is basically the cockpit crew getting what they need, the operations team on the ground, as well as the maintenance folks. So you have a pipe now in the air that can get information anywhere you want at any time you want. So you have real-time data flowing from the aircraft. You get it so you know where the aircraft is at all times. You know how the engines are operating all the time. If you get some weather data, you could actually reroute the airplane based on weather data, not just from your airplane, but from multiple airplanes. It's kind of like crowdsourcing. And how many people here use Waze on their phone for traffic? The same thing can be done now airborne with weather and turbulence. So you get that up to the aircraft. You could move where the aircraft needs to fly to get better winds, to get less turbulence. There's a lot of things you can do with that crowdsourcing, not just surfing the web in the back or sending text and emails in the back. So a lot of operational aspects to save money, efficiencies, and just better flight capability.
So, what are the crew not getting now that they will get in 5 years?
I think what the crew are going to start to see is, glass cockpits. We talk about in Collins Aerospace. They talk about delivering information to the glass, and I think that in the next 5 years, whilst there will be information delivered, and I think the glass is probably the best place for it. Yes, we carry iPads onto aircraft now, and those have been a great kind of help in moving forward with paperless cockpits and enablement like that. But ultimately, probably the best place to put information is in the cockpit that exists, and there'll be different sorts of information, and maybe, I think this is the next big step, it really is, to be a lot more preemptive and prescriptive about what the pilot really needs to know. If you just give a pilot a pile of paper about the weather of the day, based on their experience, they will be able to interpret that and make decisions. But we should be able to preempt a lot of those decisions and actually give them a more instructive kind of assistance, where they can then either accept or reject it, request a different depending on how they see and interpret it. So I think there's going to be some of the routine could go away. There will be that should free up time in some ways, whether or not all the pilots need all of the time, but there'll be enhanced capacity for dealing with other things. And whether that time that you've now freed up is another opportunity, I don't know. the talk of like pilotless aircraft, maybe that is a little bit further away than single pilot being able to be effective. You could, you know, with the current technologies, you could have virtual pilots. You could have a remote pilot potentially helping to manage their whole fleet from the ground. If there was an emergency, they could help handle that emergency.
Because the former head of the FAA used to say the future was you'd have a pilot and a dog, and a bus, and the dog's job, the pilot's job is to feed the dog, and then the dog's job is to pilot the pilot if he tries to touch them. Do you see that?
Are you looking to go to kennels now?
So your virtual fleet crews for perhaps an emergency is one option. What about things like aircraft systems management, reliability, preventative maintenance?
Yeah, so that's also going on. There's a number of activities out there already to try and take data off the aircraft, and essentially they're trying to get to the point where they can say that we pretty much guarantee that you won't have an aircraft on the ground incident as a result of the technology on board, because you can preempt the maintenance that's required, see faults developing, swap out the boxes, whatever it is you need to do there, or understand them better, you know, essentially they'll heal themselves or reboot things.
Delta Airlines has been doing this for the last couple of years now with our system on board. They're actually watching the aircraft that they fly and all the routes, and they can see the system starting to fail well in advance. So as the airplane is getting ready to say land in say Cleveland, they already have the box waiting on tarmac for when that plane rises. They can swap the box out and put the plane back airplane again. They showed the graph, I forgot which magazine it was in, showing like their maintenance ground time going from like a couple hundred down to like 20 in a matter of 18 months using various algorithms and monitoring the systems on the airplane. So there's a lot of stuff you can do, like set up the real-time data now between engines, avionics, all the systems on those aircraft, that once you monitor it and see it, you could, like I said, preempt that, especially at the airline side. Maybe not so much in the business world, you can still do it, but it's not as time critical as the airline, where they could turn the airplane down in 20 minutes, they take a couple hours. In some cases, they could get equipment on the airplane, flying it to the destination on another flight that's, you know, on their same airline. A lot of stuff happening on that side.
And I think in business aviation, there's obviously that continuing challenge of the resilience of your fleet of aircraft, whether or not you've got spare aircraft, how do you access supplemental lift, what can you do at that point? If you can anticipate or reduce the risk of AOG incidents, then that's going to make a huge difference to a lot of operators, and that allows them to be more efficient. The most efficient operators will be the most competitive, so on and so forth.
There's a saying though, isn't there, about data? If someone's selling your data, you're the product, you're not the customer. So, you know, if I'm an operator and I'm flying regularly and I'm giving you that data for free and you're charging me for maintenance, does it change? Is there going to be a new model?
Well, I would be looking at it from the. I was in the Air Force, and there was always that kind of crew room element of people in a squadron who were talking to each other about what was going on, and they kind of got corporate knowledge from that. That doesn't necessarily exist in most flight departments. It struggles to exist in some airlines, although obviously safety management systems help to promulgate learned lessons. I think that the opportunity really is to aggregate data from large groups of people, anonymize it, and offer up other insights that you otherwise just wouldn't be able to gain, because typically business jet operators, they don't know where they're flying to tomorrow necessarily. They're waiting for the phone to ring and assign them to that mission.
Again, sticking with the cynical things going to go wrong in the future. Nowadays, when a modern car breaks down, the roadside mechanic can't fix it. In the old days, they could. But now they're so computerized, they just can tow you to a dealership that can handle that car. Is this going to push the independence out even further from the maintenance, where they don't have the data that, say, an OEM shop will have, an OEM shop will be able to see the predictive? Is this going to make it maintenance more of a monopoly?
I don't think so. I mean, a lot of this, at least on the avionics side, a lot of the boxes, if something's wrong with it, they're swapping the box out. So any independent maintenance guy could swap a box out, reload the software, and get that back up and running. On some of the engine stuff, yeah, maybe a little bit more complicated. You can't really swap an engine out usually that quickly, but then again, you can, depending on the engine. So you'll still have a lot of independent shops out there, I think, still be able to do, I would say, line maintenance. Basically taking boxes out, putting them back in, turning the aircraft back to service. Going inside the boxes and trying to fix something inside with software, going inside the engine. Yeah, you can probably see more of that being done by the OEM.
I hadn't actually considered whether or not, I don't think that's the objective, but maybe somebody's thinking like that it's a monopolizing objective. But I think that as you create, you smooth out some of the wrinkles in one place, and you're going to find other things that other people have got the capacity to now fill in and do better. And that's where I think that, thinking about the JetX experience, the whole experience, that's where the opportunity is to improve things. And what those improvements are, we don't really know. A lot of, I find myself, we're putting together systems because people see that they can use them. These satellite systems are not necessarily put up there for aviation, they're put up there for maritime and land solutions, probably more so than aviation. And we're piggybacking off that. The opportunity for aviation, business aviation in particular, to gain from that is great. But what those gains are, I don't know, but if people want to ask questions about what might be possible, I think we've got the right sort of smart people that can go, yeah, that's a great idea, we could probably, okay, now we take it to the next step. And that's where we need that interaction. Events like this are great for being able to talk to people about different ideas and see things from different viewpoints. In addition, I think we're also in a place where we can look at adjacent markets, certainly in the automotive industry, what they're doing there, how things, the whole urban air mobility revolution was interesting. In some ways, if they solved those problems for air, they'll probably have solved it for the ground anyway, so maybe the issue goes away. It's a very interesting time for, at the moment, data lakes are being created. What that information and how we interpret it and what insights we're going to gain from it is not yet clear. The questions need to be continued to be asked and see if we can find out the answers.
What's some data lake? Is it like a wine lake or a butter mountain?
It's all the information that's being stored, just taken, and then it's whether or not it's used. Some of it might not be used because there was no reason to ask the question of it, but it's there, it's being stored.
We've talked about pilots. What about operations? What do you see as the future of making things professional?
Well, there's a lot of things in the operations side that we see just nowadays where, if you're on the airplane and say there's a medical emergency, having the ability to use the connectivity to call a doctor. A lot in the US is very popular now. We get what's called virtual doctor. So to save money on medical costs, instead of me going to go see a doctor, I go on my computer, call a doctor, and you do basically a Skype call with the doctor, and he diagnoses you on that Skype call. So operations like that, where you get medical on board the airplane in case something happens. On the operational side, if you divert an aircraft, we had in the U.S. one of the race car drivers uses an airplane with our system on it. He was coming back from a race. The airport he was landing in had a snowstorm. You probably don't see that out this way, but in the U.S. you get a lot of snowstorms, especially this time of year. And the airport was actually closed, but he was able to go on to his hangar cameras and see how much snow actually fell. And since it was a small airport, he called the airport manager and asked him to clear the runways and clear the pathway to get the airplane back on deck. So having the connectivity on board allowed them to actually, he said, diverting with the driver, his wife, and their 3-year-old daughter, they were the line right at that airport. So there's a lot of areas in the operational side where you can use that connectivity to avoid a deviation. Also, from what, like I said, on the efficiency side, as far as if something breaks on board, you get the parts on deck ahead of time, pre-positioned for the aircraft when it lands. You can see better flight times by using the weather data. So there's a lot of things on the operational side that just having that pipe on board, it gets you to more efficient operations, better fuel burn, better approaches. So you want to come into an airport, you could pre-position the airplane based on digital aid as you get from the connectivity to really set up for that next, the first, point to come into that approach. So there's a lot of things you could do there.
James, operations?
Well, I think that the main thing is going to be just increased flexibility, and one of the things that we're sort of working hard on is to be able to take as much of what you might consider to be a desktop planning exercise and be able to put most of that functionality through a phone. So in order to do that, you have to start getting a bit smarter about the way that you present certain information, and also how you do some of the planning, because at the moment there's quite a high degree of human interaction. We've needed to upgrade our flight planning engine, which is ongoing at the moment, and those things become more predictive as more information is available to plan and route, even before you get to the weather issue that's kind of right in front of you. The weather systems are much more predictable. Year on year, the computing power and the ability to predict what the weather's going to be tomorrow is increasing. All of this information has to be processed in a meaningful way that somebody can actually do something with it without it just being a 500-page document that somebody has to interpret.
So, in the ideal world, you're going to have connected aircraft telling everything. Part goes, as you're flying into the next airport, the 3D printer is creating that part, and the robot will put it on your aircraft briefly. A miniature robot will go into the engine and change it.
You're in the futurology business now. There's some amazing things coming. There's that starburst, which of 311 emerging technologies. You'd be surprised how many of them you recognise when you look at the list on this starburst. They're not. That's because they're happening now. Not all of them is clear what it's going to mean or what you're going to do with it, but the technologies are quite amazing in all sorts of areas, not just this.
But the question I was following on to, how much is this all going to cost?
It's hard to say. I mean, sometimes technology, you bring it out, it's actually cheaper than the current stuff that's out there. Sometimes it's more expensive. It really depends on the value you get with it. The way, people ask about, our cost for connectivity. Back when we first came out with connectivity about 20 years ago, compared with the capability you had there where you had maybe 2400 baud, 9600 baud, so really slow internet, you're paying the same amount now, but getting 15 megabits per second. So huge difference in capabilities, but for the same cost. So same thing with some of the new technology. So it may be more expensive, but you might be getting a lot more value out of it, a lot more capability out of it. So just looking at a price point is hard to really say. It's really what you're getting for that technology.
The first one costs the most, and then if everyone orders after that, they get very cheap very quickly.
So you don't want to be first.
You don't want to be an early adopter.
We
Okay.
have to develop them. We have to develop them. The idea has to be developed.
Here's a question. Are business jets in the Middle East? I think this question on the slide is less ambitious. Are we ever going to be able to watch cable TV on a business jet in the Middle East like you can in the US? It's a question for the audience.
You should be able to do that now. I mean, on some of the systems we have and our competitors have, with the speeds of 15 megabits per second and above, you could actually watch cable TV. You don't need much more than 5 or 6 megabits per second to watch a live stream TV on an airplane. So that capability is now if you have it installed on the airplane.
It's not a technical issue. I mean, there is what resolution you want to watch it in and stuff like that. But there's a bit of a licensing issue across different countries and stuff like that. So.
Here's a question from an operator. Is connectivity pricing ever going to reduce? They were obviously number one.
The more you use it, the more you fly, the cheaper it gets.
And I think we're going to see over the next few years too is, as James alluded to, we're a small percentage of the satellite business. I mean, we're looking at 10 to 15% of most satellites is aviation. You have a lot of these low Earth satellites going up now through OneWeb. You have Starlink through SpaceX, plus a bunch of other companies. There are going to be so many satellites up in the air going forward that I think the prices will start coming down. Just because it's not going to become a commodity per se, but the more capacity you have, the more competition you have, prices generally go down in that kind of market segment. So I think over time you'll get better performance. I think prices will start coming down. It's going to happen in the next, year, probably not. In the next 10 years, yeah, probably. Just like, things have changed over the last few years.
Yeah, and in addition to that, the antenna technology that can receive these from these different satellites is improving all the time. That means that we can fit smaller antennas on which will fit on smaller aircraft. So although the question previously was about is it a large cabin market, it is, and maybe there's an opportunity there for a smaller aircraft to still have a very good experience in the cabin and in the cockpit connectivity to the operations.
Plus all these lower satellites will probably block out the sun and will solve global warming at the same time, because there'd be something like 17,000 satellites are supposed to go up in the next 5 to 6 years in low Earth orbit. Think about the numbers that number of satellites that we have to produce to get that much up. They're actually becoming a point where these small satellites are being made on a production line versus individually built like currently they are. So it brings their cost down. If their cost goes down, they can pass it on to the consumer.
Okay, we've got some. Are there any old school questions in the audience or comments? We've got a couple more on Slido. Just a reminder, there is a survey on Slido if you'd like to take part looking at connectivity. Are there financing options? This is a question from the audience. Are there financing options available for hardware and STC costs?
Yes, we've started to do those. And now I've also heard that there's interest in doing it from the whole aircraft cost, and potentially upgrading equipment as part of the requirement for the finance of the aircraft, remortgaging or whatever.
And likewise, definitely in the U.S., there's certain companies out there that will finance aviation upgrades, especially right now the ADS-B mandate going on in the U.S. and Europe. There's companies that actually will finance, and you can also tie in internet connectivity as part of that.
I was going to come back to ADS-B. Another question I've heard operators ask is why can't it be like a mobile phone, where you put the hardware in for it and charge you over the course?
It's interesting you asked that question because we offered a program a few years back about with Swift Broadband where we gave the equipment for free and then you just paid, signed up for so many years, and we had very few takers on that. Most people just wanted to buy the equipment and not be signed up for a 2-year commitment. So, like I said, we tried it, we didn't get a whole lot of uptake in it. We can look at it again if there's enough people that are interested in doing something like that.
For the right kind of deal, those things can be put together. That's certainly a question that has been asked, and we've looked into doing it. Whether or not it always comes off, that's another. It's not in our price book.
You can make the spreadsheet. You mentioned ADS-B. Do you want to take us through ADS-B for beginners?
As far as
the FAA mandate, the deadline of January the 1st.
Yes. So in the U.S., every aircraft that flies in U.S. airspace, pretty much, unless you're flying in like really remote areas, needs ADS-B installed by December 31st, 2019. They say 2020, but that's January 1st. So you gotta have it installed before January 1st if you want to fly on January 1st. So it's taking up a lot of the capacity in the U.S. The majority of the aircraft don't have it done yet, so there's a lot of concern about that getting completed. In Europe, if it's over, I think, 12,500 pounds or 5,700 kilograms, you need to get it done by June of 2020. So if you fly in the European airspace or U.S. airspace, you're going to need to have ADS-B on your aircraft. And that, depending on the aircraft and what's out there, the cost to get that done and how long it takes to get it done varies quite a bit. So just talk to the various MROs on your aircraft. And Honeywell's got a lot of solutions, Collins got a lot of solutions out there. Garmin, just depends on what you have inside the airplane, what makes sense for getting that upgrade.
the equipment's there, the mandates have been there for a long time. The problem for some people has been in, or will be, in not having already booked a slot in an MRO to get it done. And those slots are filling up or full in some cases, I understand.
Yeah, I had a US MRO who was telling me that there's also a delay. It started to book. You have to have the equipment you need 3 months in advance. It's starting to get, that's becoming another pressure point. Just getting the parts in time to get it done. Do you see a lot of this aircraft coming over to places like Africa? I mean, it's just a chance for, if you've got an aircraft that hasn't been easily compliant by the end of the year, that's great to sell it outside the US.
Maybe on some of the smaller aircraft, because they'll stay pretty local then, just fly in a local market where you don't need ASP, but any of the bigger aircraft, if you fly anywhere, Australia requires ADSB too. There's a lot of parts of the world now that require ADSB. You're seeing mandates now in Colombia, Mexico, and Latin America as well. So it's starting to spread out. You may be, like I said, unloaded a smaller aircraft in the African market where they're only going to fly in Africa. But I think you can see a lot of the really old aircraft get parked and just basically salvaged.
Everybody wants to fly in the airspace, and the airspace is getting increasingly congested. ADSB assists with management of that airspace system. So there's a lot of benefits to it for the whole user group. The mandates, I believe, are they're going to be very hard about them. There's little or no exception to be expected. So it should be done.
Any more questions from the audience? Final question. In The Graduate, there's a scene where they go, you need to go into rubber or plastics, or what technology is most exciting you?
I'm pretty interested in the autonomous or semi-autonomous solutions and how those can solve a lot of other things. Thinking like it's like a hive mind or something like that.
Yeah, this low Earth orbit satellite business looks really interesting because the idea behind that is to get into the remote areas of the world. So there's 8 billion people in the world. Only about 20% of that is actually connected. So their goal is to actually get the rest of that world connected somehow through phones or getting water supplies and food out to these folks. So I think there's a lot of things that's going to happen having those satellites up there and the capabilities those are going to bring across the board.
Great. And I think